Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We are embarking on the AFC and NFC championship weekend where we'll see who goes to the Super Bowl. Frankly, I don't care as long as it's not Kansas City.
Sour grapes.
Yep. They can go. No, never mind. We'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Ross.
Well, we haven't seen, the Super Bowl commercials yet. Probably in a week, I'll get a preview on Sportsology. Like, I'll get a link and I can look at them all. But I already saw one. Like, I was going to talk about sports, but this thing has gone beyond sports. It's a commercial for eHarmony, and it says, get someone like who knows you, something like that. And it shows a girl popping a back zit off a guy. And I'm like, maybe after 10 years of marriage, you get to that point. I'm not sure eHarmony finds you that person, though, because I'm pretty sure if you put that in your profile, you may need to pop a zit on my back. Nobody's
going to do that. I could see. It could have been that, or it could have been, if you be willing to hold someone's vomit cup if they got sick on a cruise ship.
But I would rather hold the vomit cup than pop a zit off someone's back.
Some people are into that, though.
It looked pretty big. I mean, it looked pretty big.
That's pretty gross. I'm sorry.
It's gonna go great while you're trying to dip your wings in ranch or in a Super Bowl.
Got. Oh no. That's a Cardinal suit. It's blue cheese. Now I will say this because you do see some of the commercials sort of sneaking in. Like, okay, I know that they'll probably have a whole battery of commercials, different ones. But like Liberty Mutual ones were the emu,
Liberty Bibberty.
Liberty Bibberty, right? They have the competing guys, like the one who had Limu the emu.
Yes.
And now the other guy who can't say a word correctly. They're sort of vying for like who's going to be the you know that there's going to be like 2 or 3 commercials like that. And also Geico has brought back the caveman. So they're
and of course you have and of course FanDuel's doing bringing back Gronk again for another field goal kick, and now they've got John Cena as the mustache twirling villain in that whole thing.
Yeah.
No, that's true. And I did get I did get an email for a clip, and you've seen it once with like at BetMGM with Vince Vaughn kind of pushing Tom Brady out of the camera angle, so you just see him. So that's true. That's probably a Super Bowl couple of commercials too.
Now, as you know, we always will have a movie preview or two, during the Super Bowl, and usually it's something big, like a Mission Impossible, or because they're the second Mission Impossible.
I don't know if that's big anymore, but go ahead.
It may not be big anymore, but I'm saying that, but that one's coming up. But I have a feeling we're going to see this one, and I already saw the preview for it, and okay. They're redoing Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah. Now, okay, here's the thing. Jake Gyllenhaal is the Patrick Swayze character, okay? So that's, that I don't know. I mean, I like Jake Gyllenhaal, but again, we're going down territory that I wish we weren't going down, because it's like, I mean, this makes me feel old because it's a movie that came out when I was working at the movie theaters, and I realized that was 30 years ago, but still. It's directed by the Doug Lyman, who directed Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They're also remaking, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that.
Series. That one's a series.
As a series,
Yeah.
He did he did the Firstborn movie. But the main villain, and first of all, they changed it. He's not a bouncer. He's a former UFC fighter.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're using. I'm pretty sure they're using some of the video from. There was a UFC movie that
they recorded basically during one of the recent UFC events they did Gyllenhaal doing a weigh-in basically during an actual live event with an actual media audience,
Right.
and basically just to kind of get him sort of whatever that whole scene will be. But yeah, there's a lot of UFC cross stuff that seems to be in this film, which again, now that UFC and WWE are kind of together, right? Now with UFC, they're part of what, Endeavor, as it's called now, Russ?
Yeah.
So
But
we're going to see more and more of that, whereas WWE's had a lot of their wrestlers in movies now. So
I'm pretty sure that it was either a boxing or a UFC movie that he did a movie called Southpaw a few years back.
Yeah, that was a boxing movie. I saw like 10 seconds. No, you're.
It was Jake Gyllenhaal.
I'm thinking
and Gyllenhaal was in it. Yeah.
I'm thinking
Forrest Whitaker and Rachel McAdams.
Yeah, and there was another MMA movie. I think there was. I forget the name of the one with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton.
Warrior with Tom Hardy.
They were brothers.
That was good. Warrior was excellent.
That was really good. Now, the reason I bring this up is because the main villain in this movie is Conor McGregor. And I'm like, oh my God. He's trying to cross over, man.
Why are you surprised? Of course.
Oh, I'm not surprised. I just think
he's such a streaming, just the cock of the walk, phrase, whatever you want to call it. He's basically, he literally has the mustache to twirl.
Yeah, and he'll be swilling proper number 12 vodka.
I'm sure there'll be plenty of those. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No whiskey, Irish whiskey. They don't do vodka in Ireland. Come on.
No, I meant Irish whiskey. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Bye. For some reason,
insider call. I was gonna say that's an insider call to Michael.
Yes.
Hey, you never know who the sources are.
Yeah.
Might have the initials RC. We don't know.
You never know.
Yeah.
Ralph Brandon. No, he was a K. K was for Ralph Brandon.
Yep.
That's true.
Indeed.
Sorry about that. No. Okay, we'll get started with the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, January 26th, 2024.
I'm just glad to hear that Mike got the date correct. Sometimes certain hosts on this show do get confused by the date. So we're going to say, hi, I'm Anthony Mangione.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I don't know who you're talking about, Ant. And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, we'll start with the news of the day, and that is the contract of Owen Tippett, an 8-year deal. Now, it's not 100% finalized, but everybody's reporting it. So and it's on cap friendly as a pending transaction.
Could very well be announced while we're doing this show.
Yes,
right.
It's a 8-year deal at an AAV of $6.2 million. Now, Tippett had 27 goals last year, which might be more than many people thought that he was ever going to get. Based on he'd been with Florida for a couple years and really hadn't really taken flight, so to speak. He was part of the Claude Giroux deal. Then finished the season with the Flyers, 27 goals in his first full year with the Flyers, and this year he's got 18 goals in 46 games. So he's on a 30-plus goal pace. Anthony, for you first, then Russ, your thoughts on this deal and your surprise at how much or how long. What are your thoughts on the deal?
So for me, I think there's always been a bit of a push to try to get Tippett signed to a longer-term deal sooner rather than later. Term one, I wasn't 100% sure on. The fact that the Flyers went full max 8 years on it was a moderate supply. So I figured the cap hit was going to be potentially in the high fives. Philly ends up going 6.2, which is to me a tad higher than what I would have expected. But I'm not surprised at the fact that Philadelphia decided to lock him up long term. I think they're trying to get certain aspects of their roster that they are identifying as long term, locked in for that term. And again, Tippett's been They know, he knows too, that he's not a finished product yet. Again, for Philadelphia, I think the way they're looking at this is as the cap continues to grow, as we always talk about with any of these long-term deals, that that the deal will look pretty good for Philadelphia if he continues on on the expected trajectory, which is that he's going to be in the high 20s, somewhere in the 30 goal range, 30 goal range consistently. And that's, again, what they're hoping for. And again, there's definitely been some positive developments this season for Tippett, beyond just the highlight reel goals that he scored in St. Louis and against Dallas. That being said, there's still some raw elements of his game as well that still need to round into shape. But this gives them sort of time and a fixed number that they obviously were comfortable with. We'll see what the final conversations will be with regards to what the NMC is. I know there have been some scuttlebutt about years 3 to 6 being a partial NMC, which may be the area of give and take here, where he doesn't have an extensive list of places he could be moved to if things don't go well. But that was the trade-off for making a little bit more than was expected in the contract. So Philly obviously has identified him as a key, element of their future and moved to sign him to that contract. And again, we're going to see as time goes on. So yeah, in the end, Mike, I would say I didn't expect it to be over 6, but it is. But it's not crazy. I don't think it's a crazy number for a guy who they anticipate being high 20s, low 30s, and consistently in their top 6 for for as long as they have them.
Well, Russ, like I said to you over the phone, he was 2 years away from being UFA because he had a 2-year bridge coming out of his ELC. So that means they bought 6 unrestricted years. And for that fact, plus he's only scored over 20 goals once. It was in his first year. So they're rolling the dice here. But I thought it was a little rich.
Plus, it's a little rich. I mean, what Anthony said, I've got no qualm with anything he said. I do think it's a little rich. They are projecting, and that's fine to do. But see, my problem is the 8 years. Like if I'm given the 8 years, it's got to be under 6. Like I wanted it like 5-8 if I'm the GM. Like if I'm given 8 years, because that's security now that could be a problem year 6. Like all of a sudden,
I will say this, Russ, not to interrupt, but we do need also we do need to see what the structure of the deal is too, which we don't know. We're speculating at this point.
And that's why I'm saying it's not outrageous, but it's going to cause another problem. And so this is like, you've got a number here, and now what are you going to do with Travis Konecny? Because I would not sign Travis Konecny to an 8-year deal. You sign him to an 8-year deal, you're looking at him and Sean Couturier getting old together. And then there could be starting that problem all over again with the team, where now you got a couple contracts you don't know what to do with. So, my feeling was with Konecny, hey, if you wanted to keep him for 5 years, I'd probably be okay with that. Anything more than that, no. Because then you're starting to project with players in their 30s, and that's where this league gets in trouble. Guys are getting faster, and Tippett's certainly fast, so that's good for him. Guys are getting faster. The league's getting faster. There's fewer and fewer players that make it to the age of 35 now in this league. 34.
So it does beg the question again: what does happen? In terms of what they're going to do with Travis Konecny.
Making more. I think we all agree on that.
Right. Exactly. And
Well, okay. Here's the situation. And I doing show prep with Russ here and airing my thoughts. I looked at the situation with the Flyers right now, and obviously everybody knows my opinion that, I think that you're not going to stop a team from having success, but if you're going to have a proper rebuild, you needed to either trade more players off the roster or not have John Tortorella, who's going to try to win. But, they kept him around, and I understand why, because they were in year 2 of a 4-year contract, I believe. So, but the situation here is you really haven't cleaned up the mess that is the Flyers salary cap situation. Currently, you've got Couturier long-term, and, if he stays healthy, that's great because he's a really good player if he's healthy, but, he's had some injury issues. You've got a lot of dead money on the cap. Now that comes out of the coffers of Comcast. If you're talking about Ryan Ellis or players who are on LTIR, but you've got dead money in terms of money that was retained on the Kevin Hayes deal. Like a lot of stuff that's sort of unsettled cap wise, and you're committing to somebody who's had one good year to an 8-year deal. They really haven't cleaned up the mess, Anthony, and that's where I'm a little hesitant about this deal, the Konechny thing, and then a guy like Morgan Frost. If Morgan Frost continues on the pace that he's going right now, and he's got another year left in his contract, I mean, he's a center. What are you going to be paying him? It's going to be a lot.
And I think in this circumstance, Mike, there's going to be, I think, the other shoe dropping, which is certain players that they're going to be looking to move off as a result of this. I mean, in many ways, it's not unlike, in some cases, it's not a completely same situation, but Flyers just signed somebody to an 8-year deal. Obviously, Toronto Maple Leafs just signed somebody to an 8-year deal. If you're committing in one end, you have to also look at potentially shedding in other areas. And I don't think the Flyers, their intention, I mean, the messaging that has come out of them is that while they're certainly happy with where the team is sort of developing under John Tortorella.
Mm-hmm.
The messaging is we quote unquote can't fall in love with that. We can't fall in love with guys.
Right.
But it's very obvious they've fallen in love with Owen Tippett.
Right.
Otherwise you don't make this commitment. But that means somebody. But that means now that if you're looking to keep responsible, if you're trying to keep things responsible going forward with the cap, there's going to be guys that are definitely going to probably be getting moved off. You have to consider, I mean, obviously Drysdale's on the first year of a bridge deal. Right. If you've acquired him, you already committed quite a bit of money, obviously, to Travis Sanheim. You're pretty much committed on that front, and they're not planning on moving those guys. They look at those two as obviously being core to their future. But yeah, I do think if they have opportunities here to move certain guys off, if they know, again, 5-game winning streak followed by a 4-game losing streak, you have to sort of look at the situation and recognize what your team is. You're going to be up, you're going to be down. Some of that's obviously a product of a lot of games in this stretch before the All-Star game. But at the same time, you also have to realize and say, are they going to be able to stay in this race? And if you're thinking you can move guys off and move off salary in this case and have ability to do that, I think that's a direction that they will still probably point towards as we get closer to the deadline.
Here's the one thing I would add to it. Like Anthony said, you can't fall in love with players, but Nick Seeler will be the next one to get a contract. I think we all know that. That's
but in terms of the commitment on a Nick Seeler,
it's a short term, but it doesn't matter. It's just the idea that they're going to sign him, and they're probably going to sign him during the season. That's all. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
But I'll just say this: it's like, okay, if Nick Seeler,
what's the return you're going to get for him anyway?
Right. Yeah, you're probably going to get a 4th or 5th round pick in a trade, and if you're paying him anything more than $1 million, then Danny Briere should go back.
They're going to pay more than $1 million, Mike. That's definite.
Then Danny Briere should go back to GM school because that's.
We'll see what the number is. The other thing is about Konechny, I would sign him, but not at if it's 7.5, I'm not doing it. And the reason I'm not doing it.
He's got another year after this year at 5.5, so he's up after the 24-25 season. And right now he's 26, so he's only 2 years older than Tippett.
Right, but here's my thinking on this, and this is where I have to think. I can't just worry about Owen Tippett and his money. I have to worry about the next 3 or 4 if I'm the GM. And so my problem is Konechny. So he won't get traded this season, but I got to talk with him before the exit interviews and see where they're at. And if he wants over 7, he wants close to 7.5, and they want 5 years or more, then I'm trading him at the draft. And I'm doing that
you're going to for a fact now that Owen Tippett's gotten that deal, that number is going to be above 7. That for a fact.
So that's my point. So now I do have to, if it's me, I am trading him at the draft because I know my next big number in 2 years is Morgan Frost. And if Morgan Frost starts to show what he's showing now, then.
But the Flyers also have to be. But the Flyers also need to be.
I think he was going to say they have to be committed to him, and I get it.
Right.
He has to show it until
he
until
has
they
to show it
sign him.
again this season, and he's having certainly. But it's a situation where with him, there's no more room for up and down for Morgan.
No, I agree. I'm assuming it's all smooth sailing with Frost, and what we're seeing is just like what it's going to be and get better. If that were the case, this is what I'm protecting against, is what that number is going to be.
Well, you've got three guys right now who are, and okay, I'm not saying they're all going to get what Tippett got, and then we'll get off of this. But three guys who after this year, they have one more year, and then they're ARB eligible: Frost, York, and Cates. And at that point, you have to, maybe even this summer, you have to make the decision of whether you're going to commit to those guys or whether you're going to string it out to the fact that you're going to go another bridge deal and let them go to UFA. That's the decision you have to make, because again, you've got Atkinson with another year at almost $6 million after this year. You've got Konechny with another year after this year at $5.5 million. You're committed long-term to Sanheim and Ristolainen. I mean, there's a lot of work here for Danny Briere to do, and a lot of decisions that you have to make. And you have to navigate that situation. Otherwise, you could be digging yourself another new hole, just like the one you're trying to dig yourself out of right now. So, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see what they do. Now, on the injury front, Russ, bad news from the Rangers when it comes to Filipino. He came back from Europe where he was recuperating. He was practicing with the team, ramping up to what I assume would have been, to play after the All-Star break, and he gets dinged in practice, was down on the ice for a long time, and, obviously it sounds like this is a major setback.
Yeah, I was taken aback by it because I guess they had an optional skate, and Dan Rosen did a good job of reporting, who was there, and there were a couple other guys, Lecision and someone else. I mean, honestly, I think it was only a week and a half ago that we saw just Heedle on the ice. And I was like, okay, he's on the ice, fine. If he's doing a few twirls and, just to kind of, feel okay, that's great. I don't know why he would be in an optional skate that early on. I certainly didn't think they were going to try and bring him back after the All-Star break. Like, I felt like it was on a longer track than that. And I felt like he was probably a month away, if he'd come back at all this season, just because you had to really sort of take it. You had to be really careful about it because he went back to his home country for a while, if you remember. And a lot of times when we see that, guys don't even come back that season.
Right.
So the timing of it is weird. And I think we're going to find out more about it probably when we talk to Dennis Gorman on Off the Post on Sunday. We'll find out a little more because we'll have benefit of a few more days. But this hurts the Rangers because he's a key guy for them because of the physicality and some goal scoring down the middle. So that's now not looking great for them.
Yeah. Now, the other injury, and we don't know the extent of it, but Adam Pelech, who had apparently just come back off of the IR with a concussion, gets elbowed by Brendan Gallagher. And I'm sorry, I know that they were talking about this on Jeff Merrick's show, that Brendan Gallagher, he hadn't been suspended, I guess, in the last 18 months, which gives him a clean slate. And now that's the laughable thing about this. I know this is negotiated by the PA. You should never have a clean slate. Should Matt Cook have a clean slate, or Rafi Torres, or recidivist guys, who continually
doesn't even have a clean slate with me if I see him on the street. I'm crossing the street.
but my point is that, because it was collectively bargained, previous bad offenses get flushed. And we know Brendan Gallagher is a scum bucket. He always has been. We know, like Alex Ovechkin is, or Tom Wilson. Well, okay, what they have done in the past should never get expunged. It never should be. But
I feel for guys that have had problems with concussions, and then the league says, yes, we're trying to do everything we can about head hits, and then these things happen. And so, like, I have a hard time because, some people will be like, well, Russ, this is a physical game, and and guys are going to get hurt. And I'm like, yep, that's true. And then I go on this side where it's like, did this have to happen? And that.
No, if you got a guy who's literally making a beeline, to hit a guy, and it's very obvious that this was full the intention was there. This wasn't some kind of freak accident hit on the ice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was blatant. It was on purpose.
And he's going to hide behind the PA, and that's what's bad too.
Well, the thing is, he's only going to have a phone hearing, Ant. That means maximum of 5 games, which is a joke because, there was a whole slew of them earlier in the year that were elbowing penalties that, people thought, 2 games, and they ended up being 4 games. Like Charlie McAvoy was 4 games, and it was bad, but it wasn't 4 games bad.
Yeah,
this is 6, 7, 8 games.
It should be a judgment call by the league in this case where it's not. If it's very obvious that the player had full intention of injuring the other player and was going in that way. That's something I think at a certain point. Again, I am all for, the players have, the union and defending, players' rights and everything else. But if it's very obvious that one member of the union went out and directly injured another member of the union, hiding behind that really does just a really.
I feel like this is where, honestly, like you almost need an arbitrator, because I feel like if you bring an arbitrator up to speed about what the league is a penalty, what isn't, you tell them, and then let that person.
Problem is the league sometimes doesn't even know what it is.
I know, but you let that person
them to tell the arbitrator,
and then you let that person kind of sit on it for a night. I would feel better about the result from that independent arbitrator than I do for otherwise, and that's why I think like at some point for these kinds of hits, it should be that way, because it's like it's a little ridiculous. Like if it were me, I would love to, kick him out for the year, not because he's Brendan Gallagher, but because you did it to that guy.
Kick him out for the year, but at the minimum, that penalty should be no less than double digits.
No, right. But I'm just saying, games. I'm saying out for the year because you chose that guy. Like that guy's got issues, and you chose that guy. Right. There's a lot of other guys on the team.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I wanted to touch on this because this team's name has come, and various players on this team have come up in rumors over the last couple weeks, and it got even worse in the last 24 hours because I'm talking about Columbus. Because, okay, first of all, we heard Elvis Merzlikins, I think it was last week, there was the report that he had requested a trade. Then it was sort of denied, but it's clear that
it wasn't denied.
Yeah,
John Davidson decided to get involved, and he gave like a quote to kind of like gloss it over, and it's like it didn't have to be said because it was obvious damage control, and we all knew what was up. But we also all knew because of the salary, probably nobody wants Merzlikins.
And that's where I was going here, Ant, because good luck with Merzlikins, who's underachieved the last couple of years, whose stats have gone down each year, and he's got 3 more years at $5.4 million. Now, Roslovic's name was mentioned earlier in the year, which is bizarre because he's from Columbus.
What's funny? I've spoken to some people who cover Columbus. There's not a lot of love for Jack Roslovic there anymore. There just isn't.
But in the last 24 hours, the names of Patrick Laine and Ivan Provorov have come out in that they're listening to him, and I'm like, okay, Yarmo, you got your work cut out for you, baby. Because
it also tells me that room is in a bad spot.
Yes,
and this is when you have a combination of some of the players that we're talking about there, who've already had past issues in rooms, and Russ knows who I speak of in this case. That's the consideration that you make when you acquire certain players, and if it's become a much more me kind of room, what I'm doing versus not while everybody and not blaming other people. There's a lot. I don't like the mix in Columbus. I just don't.
No.
There's a lot. I think there's a ton. It just seems to me, and I could be wrong on this, there just seems to be a lot of competing egos in that place right now with some of the players that are there. And I just
the leader,
and they may just need to have. And I'm not saying Werenski. I think Werenski can be absolutely a big part of what goes forward for them in the future.
Right.
But there's something about it in that room that doesn't seem to be right.
Well, Russ, what this is telling me is that they really depended on Babcock being an authoritarian despot.
No question.
And they assembled.
But that's why, Mike, the players pretty much fought that. The players didn't want that.
Right.
And then Pascal Vincent, again, we all saw it happen at the beginning of the year with Pascal Vincent. It was, like a miniature version of Babcock.
He tried to play the part.
Which he's not, and that's the thing.
He's not. You're a brand new coach in the league, and he had a good reputation certainly coming in.
So I mean that's the thing. That's the thing, Russ. I think they knew that the group that they had assembled.
Yeah, that you've assembled, that the talent, individual talent level wise is there, but it's all about. I always say this. It's always about group dynamics.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's always.
Yeah, I would say this. I would say, like Anthony said, Werenski's there to stay, but eventually it'll become Fantilli's team. I hear good things already about him doing things like a pro and almost like a leader, and so I fully expect that to happen.
And Russ, you almost have to clear things out for him.
Yes,
because it
becomes a case.
It becomes a case of you don't want to poison the waters there. Right. For him in just his first couple of years. You want to, and I think it's incumbent on Columbus to start with a clean slate as possible.
There he is.
Wow. Well, okay.
I agree.
So of those three players, and here I'll just read them. Provorov's got a year left at $4.7 million. So Philadelphia retains some in that deal.
Yeah,
they do. Yep, they do.
Merzlikins has 3 more years at 5.4, and Line A has 2 more years at 8.7.
Untouchable.
I think Provorov is the easiest to move because he's a defenseman, and it's the lowest amount.
And he's gonna have to go to a team that's gonna, if it's a team that's maybe close to cup contention who needs that number 3, number 4 defenseman. Almost kind of like the Kings had, when during their cup years, where you almost would play sort of that depth defenseman role,
the Willie
in a strong with a strong room where he doesn't have to be sort of seen as one of the leaders.
I mean, I can give you 2 teams, but I can give you the main team. I would say is Seattle, because Seattle's on the verge of falling out of the playoffs, and I think
is the room again. We're talking about personalities in a strong room.
Yeah, I don't think their room has anybody that's so strong that they wouldn't welcome him in, and I think Hackstall could definitely keep him in line. He has
history, and obviously Hack has history coaching him too. So
yeah.
Well, okay, I'll give you one off the bat because I remember that there was a lot of connection between Provorov and this particular team because of who the general manager was, and that was Vegas because he played his junior in Brandon, and that was Kelly McCrimmon. How they would fit that's a question because they've got a lot of
the shed salary. You'd have to probably move off some salary, and that's any kind of a deal that Vegas is going to make at this point. They're going to have to move something out.
They need to move off Zach Whitecloud or somebody like that who's got but them. I don't know whether Toronto's room is strong enough for Provorov and obviously the factors of why he left Philadelphia, the whole situation with the pride jerseys and things of that nature. I don't know whether that would, the Leafs need defense, but I don't think they want to deal with that situation.
At this point, if the Leafs got him, he's not going to bother the locker room. He's really not. As a matter of fact, most of the time Provorov keeps to himself. Before the game, he's not that guy.
And he might be exact. And at the end of the day, maybe in Toronto, maybe playing in Toronto is exactly. He may be exactly what the Leafs need. If you're looking for that additional defenseman who, if he plays within himself.
Mm-hmm.
Works hard, trains
and
hard,
plays within the system, works hard, and and is a workhorse. That could be huge for the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll take a few questions before we end the show. Goalie FP is asking, what are the Rangers looking to get at the deadline?
A center and a depth defenseman, someone who can play the bottom pair to sort
Pretty
of.
much say that for every team a lot of teams at
You
the
really
deadline.
can.
Everybody wants their centers.
Yeah,
and everybody wants their defensemen.
But now with Hedl out, and you'd have to assume that if he has a reoccurrence, that he's probably out for the year. They just sent Bonino down to the minors, so they're
Bonino. I didn't like the signing. I told you that. I thought he was past it, and that's their way of saying he's past it. So yeah.
So they're looking for a center. I would think.
They probably like both, but the center is most important.
Would Edmonton look at Provorov?
They might.
Yeah,
probably.
They might. He's available. They need, they could use another. I think they could certainly use another defenseman. I mean, I don't think they're worried about by them signing. I would say them signing Corey Perry tells me they're not worried too much about baggage.
Yeah. I'll pair these two questions together here because Whoomp Donkey 24/7 is asking.
We've got an update here.
I love that. I love that name. What?
So an update from Vince Mercogliano.
Yep.
So his tweet says, the fears about Hedl have been realized. Heard from a source, it's a setback directly related to his previous head injury. There's obviously a hockey side to it, but concerns about Hedl's well-being are at the forefront. So I don't think we're seeing him this year.
Yeah, this is like he's a young player. He's got concussion issues. Don't rush him back. Let him sit out the rest of the year, and hopefully with time it resets. But anyway, the question was any Red Wings rumors, and then
I don't have a rumor. I was talking to Mike, and
but Randy says who's the biggest player to go at the deadline. I'm still convinced that the Red Wings are not a playoff team, and if the biggest name that could go at the deadline is Patrick Kane, because I think Patrick Kane will not stay in Detroit if they're out of the playoffs, and that they can move him and that they can get something for him for that 1 year investment. So I think Patrick Kane's the biggest name. But go ahead, Russ.
Well, I do think they're going to be forced into getting somebody. Now, maybe they will make a hockey trade for Kane and get somebody with term, but I think Yzerman is going to be forced to do something because they're close enough that he can't just simply ignore it and say, we're not ready or go that route. The fans are not going to handle that very well. So I think they're going to have to do something.
Yeah, the question is what though? Where? I mean, is it goalie?
Well, defense. I mean, their defense isn't overly deep. You get past the top three, and it's not great.
No, so, and they don't want to rush Edvinson and
no, and that's the other thing, right?
So, yeah, I mean, yes, they could use a defenseman. I mean, any team that has Justin Hall on the blue line needs a defenseman. Gostisbehere, I believe he was a 1 year deal. So
yeah, he'll be there. They're not going to move him, but
right.
But I do think seeing them yesterday, they need a little more defense. There's no question about it, and they still have some young guys in the top area like Sider, who's still going through some ups and downs. So if they could get a good veteran defenseman, it would help them. Like when they lost Hronek, they lost something. Like that was a big deal.
Yeah, and the way he's played with Quinn Hughes just shows that he's a pretty good defenseman.
Well, Kevin pointed that out, a long time ago and made me relook at him, and he was right.
Question here for Russ. I see a lot of people talking about Yzerman's stock plummeting. Would love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, so as it turns out, there's going to be a draft meeting at EP Ringside that I'll be a part of, and I'm working on my new list. And he is dropping on my list, not terribly, though. I think the reason is his play away from the puck. I did watch him in an All-Star game recently, the All-American Prospects game, and I didn't see any egregious things away from the puck. Now I'm seeing things that, like if you're comparing him to Wahlstrom, the difference is Wahlstrom never got to the net. Yzerman gets to the net. He knows how to do it. He can do it from a lot of different areas. He can play first line or fourth line. So the guy's versatility on offense, I think, outweighs whatever worry you have about his play away from the puck. So he's going to drop to some degree, but this guy can score. And at the end of the day, he's going to score at the NHL level. Now, Wahlstrom had that tremendous shot, but he also had those other things to work on too. He's got more speed than Wahlstrom as well.
Go ahead, Ed.
So you believe is there a threat for him to be falling out of the top 10?
There's a threat for that to happen, yes.
That's what I thought.
It's not happening on my list, but it's a definite threat to happen.
But others it may be. Yep.
Yes.
Now, Randy mentions this, and Russ, I know you mentioned something about Lindholm when we were talking. And this is the thing. What was the stat? 1 goal in the last 14?
Yeah, I'm going to get the writer's name because he did the hard work on it. Hold on.
But here's the thing, and Calgary. Remember, all the talk about trading people happened in November when they traded Zadorov, but it was too early in the year. Even though they had slumped out of the gate, I think they had lost 6 of the last 7.
Yeah,
to trade
here's the stat. So Darren Haynes tweeted after scoring 42 goals 2 seasons ago, Elias Lindholm has 0 goals in his last 15 games, 1 goal in his last 24. He's on pace to finish with only 14. His last even strength goal was December 2nd. Not sure how much this is hurting his trade value, but it sure can't be helping it.
Yeah.
And this is
it helps when you have Matthew
now. He's got the hangover.
Yeah, it helps when you have Matthew Tkachuk and Goudreau on your wing. So that,
right. So he doesn't have those guys anymore, and he knows he's gonna get traded. He didn't sign with the team. They offered whatever they offered to him. This really needed to be dealt with in the summer, and it wasn't. And so now it's really carried over into something where they're going to get value, but nothing close to what they could have gotten a year ago.
But Anthony, this is a situation. I mean, okay, I understand Conroy's dilemma of not trading these guys in November and waiting maybe to create a market at the deadline. But you risk either injury or you risk a guy having a bad year like Lindholm's having right now. Now, there are still teams out there that are looking for centers, but what they're going to get back for Lindholm from a Boston or a Rangers or a Colorado is going to be significantly less than they would have gotten in November.
Exactly, and without an appreciable uptick in production. It's gonna. That's what they're going to be facing. I mean, you're almost. If you're one of those other teams, you're almost. If you're Calgary, you're hoping that you get a little bit more out. But again, things seem the way they are in Calgary. It's not good, and it's kind of like everybody is waiting. It feels like everybody's at the airport waiting for their flight.
Yeah,
they kept their powder dry, and normally that's the way to go and hope. That you get more.
That's a risk. I mean, it's not. I think it was prudent. It just kind of, for lack of a better word, keeping the powder dry, blew up in their face.
Right. And Chris Tanev right now, and nobody really depends on Tanev to be an offensive producer. He's a defensive defenseman. He's 33 years old. I'm just looking at his numbers right now. Yeah, he's got 9 points in 45 games. You're not getting a first-round pick.
You're not getting him for that reason either. You're a team like Edmonton or Toronto who's looking at him to add him as strong depth for your team going in, for a potential run. Although in Toronto's case, it all depends on the way Toronto's viewing things. So.
Well, and this is, and I base this on what I've heard, and what I've been told. Tanev is going to end up in Toronto. I would say, like, if you use X rumor chart, I would say it's 50-50 that he ends up in Toronto. He could go some other place if somebody offers him long-term, like somebody offered Gabranson a 4-year deal at $4 million. I mean, that's always a possibility, but I have heard stuff about him going to Toronto that makes a lot of sense. Now, based on, he's a defensive defenseman. He's a right-hand shot, though. He's going to get probably $3.5 to $4 million. He's gonna, even though he's 33 years old, he's going to get at least 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years. So I mean, that's the way the market works in terms of unrestricted free agency.
Well, I'm going to tell you this though: the right-handed shots. There was a factory of them in the top prospects game. There was only one lefty in the whole game. One lefty defenseman for 2 teams in the entire game.
So is it?
Oh my God! I was going to say we're gonna have a flip now where the left shot is going to be preferred to the right shot.
I don't know, but it was crazy.
All I know is that there was a run of right wingers for years, and now all of a sudden there's so many left wingers, it's ridiculous. So it's like, I mean, I get it, but all right. Good show, guys. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. Make sure you tune in to Off the Post on Sunday. We haven't confirmed our guest yet, but we believe it'll be Dennis Gorman. But,
I confirmed it. I said it.
Oh, you confirmed it? Okay, so it's going to be Dennis Gorman. There you go.
Russ's sources confirm.
Yes.
We're also going to talk about
it's a C5. It's a C5.
He's going to talk about Patrick Waugh too, because he does cover both. So
okay.
There you go.
All right. Remember, without the buzz.
10 a.m. Eastern time, by the way.
10 a.m. Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So for Anthony Mangione, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.